Hello there, sweet friends. This is Gina. Welcome to the Rebookery channel. I'm going to do a mishmash of a video here. I'm going to do a process at the beginning, and then I'm going to talk to you about fabric and vintage sheets and fat quarters. So the first part, I'm going through, weirdly enough, I'm going through tags. And these are tags that I have pulled off of vintage sheets. I have loved vintage sheets for, well, ever since I was a little kid. I mean, I can remember playing in the backyard and my fort was the sheets that were hanging on the clothesline. I mean, I can remember that like it was yesterday. So the smell of sheets, the feel of sheets, the colors of the vintage sheets from the 70s and 80s, that is my jam. So I've had some, and I just never really knew what to do with them. And then all of a sudden, I just got this creative burst, and I'm now obsessed with them. And I've got 4 more weeks of school left. And my plan is this summer, I'm going to make some vintage sheet quilts. And I'm going to invite you guys to come along with me on that journey. I'm thinking about doing a little video series where we kind of do it together. So I don't know. I haven't put all that together because I still have a lot of stuff going on at school. But that's my plan for this summer is I want to make some vintage sheet quilts. But anyway, okay. So I have been finding vintage sheets in thrift stores and estate sales and stuff like that. And I've been collecting them, but then I've also been getting them ready to put in my shop because I've been using them in my journals, and I love them in my journals. There's just something about the fabric of sheets, and especially if you get ones from like the 70s and 80s where they're 50% cotton, 50% polyester. Anyway, I've just been doing all kinds of research, and there's some great mentors out there for vintage sheets. One of them, her name is Kelly. I'm going to link her website below. She is unreal. Like, she loves vintage sheets as much as I love vintage sheets, maybe even more. And she sells fat quarters and makes quilts and things like that. So I will link her below. Anyway, so what I've been doing is just collecting these sheets, and I've really gotten into, like their tags, like where they came from, what company made them, what store sold them. And I have, of course, tried to find ones that I had when I was younger. So I want to document this, and I want to document this in my little journal, which is going to be kind of weird because this is going to be all fabric. So what I did was I just went through and I found a bunch of tags. Whenever I rip the sheets down into fat quarters, I always pull the tags off. And so now I'm just finding a page in my journal, and I'm taking a vintage sheet here, and I'm going to use that as the page. Now, because it's not already sewn in, I've got to get creative as to how I'm going to put this in my journal. So I kind of got some ideas, but I think what I want to do is just kind of lay out all the different scraps and all the different tags and see if I can get them in some sort of a way that I'll be able to show as much of the sheets as I possibly can and as much of those tags as I possibly can. So once I kind of got that all laid out, I then take the piece of fabric, and I'm just going to use a glue stick because I'm not wanting them to stick permanently. I just need them to kind of stay in place while I move them around. I do not have problems using a glue stick. I just do a couple of swipes, and like I said, it just keeps them in place. If you are wanting them to stay in place, there's fabric glue and more permanent solutions, but I just like the glue stick because I can run it through my sewing machine and it doesn't gum up my needle, and it just holds them in place for, just a few minutes while I figure out what I want to do. So I'm trying to get as much of the tags as exposed as possible, especially like the Montgomery Ward's tag, because, oh my gosh, that was my store. My mom and my brother and I, that was our store. I mean, we lived at Montgomery Ward's. It was right down the street from us, and we could walk there. We got our clothes there. Our back to school shopping always either came out of the JCPenney's catalog or the Montgomery Ward's catalog, or we would just go down to Montgomery Ward's. Oh my gosh, I spent so much time at Montgomery Ward's. I love Montgomery Ward's. So anyway, the Montgomery Ward's sheets and tags are just like so special to me. And I know I've been on this journey with these sheets, and I know this sounds so corny, but like I would call my mom and I'd say, Mom, do you remember blah, blah, blah sheets? And when we had them hanging on the line, and oh my gosh, we've had several conversations about sheets. And I know that seems like such a silly thing, but it's not. It's meaningful to me, and I love to be able to put these in my journal, and I love to be able to use these and find another use for these, because so many people throw them away because, you know, they're not the prettiest of patterns. They're not the most up to date. There's some gaudy colors, and there's only a few of us out there that really like, you know, harvest gold and burnt orange and brown mixed with avocado green. So, you know, we got to kind of stick together and make the best of it, and make them as pretty as we can. So I'm just kind of putting these down. And then what I'm going to end up and do is I have this stuff. It's called Sulky or Solvy. Hang on, let me look real quick. Oh, it's called Ultra Solvy, Solvy, and it's a water-soluble stabilizer, and it's by the company Sulky, Sulky. Anyway, I've seen some videos on YouTube about how to use this, and basically it will hold my stuff in place, and I can stitch over it, and then you throw it in the sink with some warm water and it will disappear, but it leaves your fabric and your stitching behind. So that's what I'm thinking, and I will link a couple of great video tutorials down at the bottom of how to use this. It is kind of expensive, I'm not gonna lie. I got mine, I think, at Joann's, and I used a 50% off coupon, so it wasn't too bad. I want to say it was like $34 maybe for a roll of it. Anyway, I don't use it very often, but I am going to use it on this because I kind of want to do like a free motion, just stitch all over this and just kind of get it all stuck down. And then I'll remove the stabilizer and have, you know, just the stitches and the fabric left behind. And then what I plan on doing once I get that done, and of course drying it and everything, and probably doing a little bit of ironing to try to get it as flat as possible, is I'm going to end up and put it in my journal. And I think I will probably just glue it to that spread I showed you earlier in my journal. I think that will fit perfectly there. And I'll just maybe use some Elmer's glue, like a liquid type glue, so that I have a good stick on there. And then that will actually be my journal spread. So just want to get all of these down and you know, get this over to my sewing machine and use my Sulky to get it all stuck together. My little journal, and this is the first time I have filmed in my new room, so forgive me if it's dark. I haven't really had time to set it up. I just got the tripod sitting on the table. So what I'm thinking is I want this side to be a pocket because I want to put some journaling in here about all the stuff I was telling you about, like, you know, talking to my mom about sheets and just remembering playing in the backyard. So I'm going to do a different type of glue over here. And then this edge, I think it'll just tuck in behind that card, and I'm just going to do just like some liquid type of glue. I'm just going to use some Elmer's craft glue, and I got this bottle at a discount store, or like a closeout store. Yeah, I know why it was closed out. I don't know, something's up with it. So whatever, just use it until I can't use it anymore. But oh my gosh, it is a pain. So I'm going to make sure I get down in that crack here in the spine, because I want it to be good and Woo! This is not very juicy. I want it to be good and stuck there in the spine. It'll also, I like using fabric. I think I've said this before. I like using fabric in my journals, especially around the spine and in that little gutter there. It just reinforces it, especially if you have like older papers and vintage papers and stuff. It just kind of gives it another layer of strength. And so I want to make sure I get it, because this is going to be a heavy page once I get it all put in there. All right. And kind of stick that down. So one of the things I love when I find my old sheets is that, so a lot of my thrift stores that I go to are ones that are run by like elderly living places, you know, like, I don't want to say like nursing homes, but they're just the ones where they're in stages. Like you can go and live by yourself, and then you have some assisted living, and then you could eventually go into full assisted living. So anyway, there's a few around here that have thrift stores, and one of the things I love is that the sheets will have their names, and they'll be, you know, either stitched in or some sort of a label. And so I just always think that's really cute. So this is Shirley's. So Shirley, thank you for letting me use your sheets. And I just wanted to keep her tag right there. So here's a Montgomery Ward's. There is a couple J.C. Penney's on here. I had a Sears and Roebuck sticker or tag, but I don't know what I did with it. It's somewhere. It'll turn up. And that's another thing, is that I left some space because there were some tags that I knew I wanted to use, but I just couldn't find them at the time. And so I left some space that I'll be able to put some other tags in. So, all right. So that's good and stuck. So now I want to go over to this side, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my tape runner. I love, love, love my tape runner. Some of you guys have asked about it. I've talked about it a couple of times before. I bought this probably 10 years ago, and it was a little birthday splurge for me. Actually, I think it was about 11 years ago. It was a birthday splurge for me, and I love it. It is my favorite. And you can get the refill tapes. I get it on scrapbookpal.com, and they are very reasonable. I can get them, and they're not in the Scotch packaging. They are in, they're taken out and they're just put in bags, and they're very reasonable, very cheap, and very fast shipping too. So I just always, like, I'll order, you know, 10 or 15 of them whenever I'm running low, and then I just have a nice supply, and I love it. It is worth every penny. I think you can get the tape adhesive, like the refills, off of Amazon too, but they are more expensive, and they do come in the Scotch packaging. Okay, so now I've got a little packet, or a little pocket in here, which is good because I think I'm going to slip in a little journaling and talk about my love for vintage sheets and all that good stuff. Now, I don't think I'm going to do it now because I have some other things that I want to do, but today, so I took the day off today, so because I had a lot of stuff I had to do, and so I've got like an agenda. So this was one of the things on my agenda. So there you go. So now it's in my little journal, and I've documented, now I gotta find it. I've documented my love for vintage sheets. I've got all my tags in here, and oh my gosh, guys, I am not gonna lie, I just love touching it. There's so much texture going on here. So yeah, okay, so that is what I'm gonna put in my journal. Now let's talk about let's talk about fat quarters. Fat quarters is a quilting term that is used to refer to a scrap of fabric. And so if you think about it as a normal quarter, okay, so a normal quarter of fabric would be about 44 inches by 9 inches. But a fat quarter it's fatter. It's going to be about 18 inches. We're going to double this over here, and we're going to actually cut this part in half right here. So what I did, because I could not wrap my brain around it, I do not have a math brain. I have a science brain, but not a math brain, which I know it doesn't make a lot of sense. But so what I did was, this is how my brain works. This is a little transparency. So this is a regular quarter. So if you have a sheet of fabric, this is your regular quarter right here, okay? And if you did a yard, this would be 36 inches this way, and this is the selvage edge to the selvage edge. And the selvage edge is just the edge that when they make the fabric, or when they process the fabric, they just have that edge where it's kind of finished, and it's not really finished, but it's like it doesn't fray on those edges. Let me show you. Here's a selvage right here, and it's a lot of times on one edge, that's where they'll have the name of the fabric and the copyright and all that good stuff. So selvage to selvage, a lot of times fabric will run 40 to 44 inches. It depends, and it depends on if it's older fabric or newer fabric, but typically it's usually about that. Okay, so then a fat quarter is now going to make it fatter, just like it says. So now you're going to go, instead of a 44 by a 9, now you're going to go, typically you can go 18, sometimes people do 20, 18 by a 22. And so that's what I did, was I made all my fat quarters 18 by 22, and it's just a nice little piece of fabric that you can use for all kinds of things. Now, like I said, quilters use them, sewers use them, but I was toying around with, do I want to use, since I'm not really a quilter, I mean, I do want to make a quilt, and I have made quilts before, but since I'm not really a quilter and I'm not really a sewer, what would be the best size for journaling? And so I started to think about it, and I was like, you know, I think the fat quarter will actually work. I think that's going to be a great size. Here is a fat quarter from a sheet. This sheet was a Canon sheet, and it's funny because now that I've started collecting these and looking for them, I know, I can just look at the sheets and I know who made them and things like that. And I had this sheet, but I wasn't lucky enough to have the purple and blue. I had brown and yellow when I was growing up. So now I'm on the hunt for that one, trying to find it. 22, and then I don't know if that's in frame, and I apologize if it's not. And there's a lot of construction going on, and I've got my windows open, so if you hear the trucks, I apologize too. And then this side over here, this is 18. So what I found was that that is the perfect size to have a nice little remnant of fabric that doesn't take up a lot of space, and it can be used in my journal for several purposes. So you can use them for like the spine of a book. So here was some fat quarters. Here's a piece of a fat quarter that I cut out, and I used for the spine of the book, and then I still had fabric left over that I could, you know, use it for other little bits. I have a lot of vintage sheets. I'm going to show them here to you in just a second. I have a lot of vintage sheets that I've been collecting, and I've ripped them down into fat quarters, and that's another thing. You can cut your fat quarters, or you can rip your fat quarters, and this is where Kelly, like I said, I'm going to link her down below. This is where she is a genius. She talked about ripping her sheets, and at first I was like, why would you want to rip your sheets? But then I realized it. And what it is so the grain doesn't always match up with your pattern. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't, but most times it does not. And the grain is just how your fibers run together. So you're going to have some that run this way and some that run this way. So when you rip your fabric, you are ripping along that grain. And what it does is it gives you a precise shape. So for me, it was rectangles for these fat quarters. And so I ripped them. That's how I do my fat quarters, is I rip them, and then it gives a precise rectangle. And it's not going to be the pattern. The pattern may be off depending on how much time the processing company and everything took to put the pattern on with the grain. Most of the time they don't, so it doesn't always match up. But anyway, the thing about the grain is, and again, if you just watch Kelly's videos, the thing about the grain is that it gives you a different, I don't know how I want to say it, heft or weight or tightness. It's all about the strength of your fabric. And so if you're a sewer, that's a really big deal. But for me, just journaling, that's not that big of a deal. These are just my notes. Oh, these are all of the vintage sheets. So when I was pulling off the tags earlier in the video, these are all of the vintage sheet tags that I've come across in my research and stuff, and I've just kind of written them down, and things to look for when you're looking for vintage sheets. Probably gonna have a fabric tag, not a plastic tag. Made in the USA, anything between 1940 and 1980. You're gonna have your washing instructions written in English. Most of them are 50-50, some are 40-60, so a cotton blend. They'll probably say no iron or percale. Back then, there were not very many king size sheets, so that's why you won't see a lot of king sheets if you're looking for vintage. And then they will say double instead of full. So those are kind of things to look for when you're looking for vintage sheets. Those are kind of, you know, little red flags to say, yeah, this is vintage. And then these are all just the different brands. And so I'm kind of on the hunt now. I'm trying to find as many of these different brands as I can. Okay, let me take you upstairs and show you my fat quarters. Okay, so I've got you upstairs here in my bedroom. It's a little dark. It is really cloudy and humid. It is springtime in Kansas City, and that means thunderstorms and cloudy and humid and gross. And so, yeah, it's kind of dark and gloomy. So I'll try to do the best I can editing to give you guys some light. So this is just some little storage things I got at Walmart. They're just plastic one, but this holds all of my fat quarters that I've got in my Etsy shop. So this tub over here, these are all of my scraps. These are the leftovers from fat quarters, and of course I'm not going to throw anything away. So when I make my quilts this summer, I'm going to use all of these scraps and stuff right here. So like this little sheet peeking out. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this was the first, let's see if I can get it in frame here. Oh, there's the cat. This was the first sheets that my daughter had when she got her big girl bed. When she was 2 years old. And so I had long gotten rid of those sheets, but I found them in a thrift store a couple weeks ago. And so I had to grab those because I remember those sheets. I love those sheets, and now I have them back. Okay, so anyway, so these are all my scraps. This is what I will use when I make my quilt. Here are all of the ones that I have ready to go. Sorry about the shadow. Ready to go. In my store, what I will do is I sell them in bundles of 3. So there are 3 fat quarters, and then I've tied them together with a scrap from a vintage sheet. And I have different color combinations. You know, I tried to pick out the coolest colors and the loveliest of you know, little coordinated colors that you guys would like. And then here are just some solids and some stripes, and then these are just what I use to tie them. Okay, so those are my ones that I'm going to sell. Okay, are you ready? This is the beast. So here are all of my sheets that I have bought, and they are waiting to be ripped. So these guys have all been washed several times. So I wash them 2 or 3 times, depending on how grimy they are. First of all, if they're gross, I don't even buy them. If they're stained or ripped, you know, I don't buy them. But if they're just lonely and forlorn, I will buy them. So when I come home, I wash them. And again, this is where Kelly had some great advice on how to wash them. She uses a little mix of detergents. I use OxyClean and then just our regular detergent, and then I throw in baking soda if it needs it, or some vinegar. And then here's the thing, my sniffer is very, very sensitive, so if I think they smell gross, then I absolutely will not sell them. I love the smell of sheets, and so you can see there's sheets. I don't know if you guys can see, it's so dark, but there's sheets back behind the sheets. So these are pillowcases, and I can get like 2 fat quarters out of pillowcases plus some scrap, and then depending on the size of the sheet, I can get some fat quarters, several fat quarters out of that. So anyway, so those are the ones that I have that just need to be ripped, and I just haven't had time, but they have all been washed, like I said, 2 or 3 times, and then I put them out in the sun to dry, because I always like to have the sunlight kind of, some of that UV light killing any leftover bacteria and stuff like that. And so then over here, this is a cabinet that it actually had a door. It was red, disgusting red, like scary red. And I bought it for my craft booth when I was doing craft fairs. And so we painted it, and then I put some wallpaper in the back of it. And then it's been sitting out in the garage since I don't do craft fairs anymore. So I brought it in. I had my husband put this shelf on, and then just put some little shelf paper. I think this was like, I got it at a little garage sale, but it's just some cheap old shelf paper. It's plastic. Just put that on top, and then this is where I have my fat quarters that have already been ripped and ironed and folded. They just haven't been, like, I haven't put them into bundles yet. So I kind of have a process. So once I wash them and I rip them, then I fold them and press them, and then they get folded up here, and then I'll just take them every once in a while, pull all of them out, and try to just color coordinate and put some little bundles together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have these guys in my shop. I also have some wallpaper packs in my shop that I'm going to show you guys here in just a second. So let me go back downstairs where I have the wallpaper. Let's talk wallpaper. So what I have done is I have made some wallpaper packs, and I just went through my stash of wallpaper, and I have several sources for wallpaper. So I have some old wallpaper books, some from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And then I went to a sale last year, and I think she was a decorator, and she just was selling boxes of wallpaper. And it was like 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. So I just got a ton and just a mixture. So what I did was I just made packs, and I made them color coordinated. So let me just show you one of the packs. So this is one of them that I will have in my Etsy shop. Make sure this is in, there we go. So what I did was I just took some upcycled page protectors, and I cut them down and stitched them. I did something a little different. I didn't cut with scissors or a paper trimmer, because this wallpaper is old. It actually cuts better if you rip it, and I know that makes some people cringe. Personally, I like the torn edge. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I like that rough torn edge. To me, it just adds a little character. But anyway, it's just easier to rip the paper than it is to cut the paper. And when you cut the paper, sometimes it doesn't I don't know, it just doesn't cut along that grain again. And so the paper is all ripped, and what I did on these guys was, because this is old and you're going to have some little imperfections and some little jagged edges and maybe a couple little tears, what I did was I cut them so that they were a generous 8. So you can see this goes a little bit more than 8, and I know it's upside down, I apologize. And then a little bit more than 4. So I'm calling this a generous 8x4 rectangle. And there are 20 in a pack, and they're all like different color themes, or some sort of a color coordinated theme. And each pack I have, let's see, how many do I have? 1, I think I have 4 of each pack. Let me look here and make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, so I have 4 of each pack. And then I have a larger pack. So here it is right here. Again, I used a page protector, and I just trimmed it down, and then I stitched. And then these are color coordinated again. And for these guys, you're not going to get the same size of each piece. These guys are going to be more assorted sizes. So I kind of kept it at large, medium, and small. And so your large pieces, I'm trying to think on the large pieces, I think I did like 7 by 10. Let me get my ruler real quick and I'll measure. Sorry, it's a hot pink ruler. So it's like 7.5 by 10. So the large pieces, you get like 7.5 by 10. And then the smaller pieces were like 6 by, that one's 6 by 10, but I think they're more like 6 by 8, you know, and like this one is a square type. And then these guys, you're gonna get some flocked paper in these guys. And then you got your smaller pieces like 6 by 3.5. So it's an assortment. And for these guys, you're gonna get an assortment of all kinds of decades. So you'll get 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. So these guys will also be in my shop too. And I have, for each color, I have 2, I think. Let me look here. So that one's red. Yeah, so I have another red pack. So I have a red pack. I have a blue, 2 blues. This one's like pastels. I love this one. This was like groovy orange and green. This one's kind of cool. This is like summer colors. And then this was like purples and blues and burgundies. So yeah, so with these guys, I have to finish putting the pictures together. I took pictures and they didn't turn out really well. So I've got the cover photo ready, but I just don't have the detail pictures ready. So I'm gonna have to hold off on putting those in the Etsy shop until I get all of the photos taken. So I have been working on journals. I haven't been working on the home bodies just because I have not had time, but I do have some home bodies that I still want to get done. Like I said, I have 4 weeks of school left, so as soon as school is out, oh, it is on, and I'm going to be making some journals. But these are just some little fabric journals that I threw together, and I'll be putting these in my shop. So this one is kind of cool because this was actually a fabric cover that someone had made, and I found it in a thrift store, and it was like a little notebook cover. So what I did was I just took it, I extended the spine, put in some chipboard, and then put a new, like a piece of trim on it so that it's got a nice spine, and then just added some fun little things to it, and then put in, this one has 7 signatures, and I used some heavy watercolor paper in here along with like ledger paper and scrapbook paper and things like that. And then this is so cute because it has a handle, so I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's got a little handle, and then on the inside it's got these little pockets. And then she had, Linda's the one who made this, Linda had put this little tag in, and so I just left her tag in. So that will be in my shop, and then it just has some seam binding that goes around, and then I made a little loop back here, and it can just go into that little loop. So that will be in my shop. And then these guys I want to try to finish up today, but this was made similar to my Forlorn fabric journals, but they're a little bit smaller. So this was a calendar page, and then I put some really cool vintage fabric on this that I am in love with. And it's like a heavy denim type fabric. And then check this out. These guys, the bulk of their pages are wallpaper. Just every other page is a piece of wallpaper. Now this is some really cool wallpaper that I just got. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's like Dave and, hang on, let me see here. Delta, and it was called Dave and Dipsy or Dave and something. I don't know. I threw the cover away, but anyway, it is 1970s, and it is vinyl on one side. So let me pull out a piece here. It's vinyl on one side with a little bit of texture, and then on the other side is, oh, there we go, David and Dash. David and, what did I call it? Dipsy? Oh Lord, I'm a Dipsy. Okay, so then on the back side is some nice matte paper, because you know this was the side that you would adhere to the wall. So this would be a great place for journaling. And then on this side you could do journaling. You could do adhere some stuff like with a tape runner. I don't know how glue will work on this. I don't know, but I do know, like, if you have a tape runner, that will definitely stick. And anyway, so it's just got some fun little weird pages in here. And then, like I said, it's got lots of wallpaper as its main pages. And then there will be a little pocket in this. And it'll be similar to my Forlorn fabrics. I followed the same kind of recipe, although these are going to be a little bit smaller. I think the pages are like five this way and 5 3/4 this way. So nice little compact journal, and it's one of those ones that just feels so good in your hands. Like you just hold it in your hands, or you throw it in your bag. So I've got to bind these, and then I'll be putting those in my shop. And I think that is about it. I feel like this video has gone on and on and on forever. I need to do some editing. So guys, thanks for hanging out with me today. Thanks for listening to all my nonsense going on about my Etsy shop. Look for it to open soon. Like, I'm hoping within the next day or two, and then I'll be adding more stuff as time goes on. I do have 2 graduations at the end of this month, and I've got family coming in, so that might get in the way a little bit of adding stuff. But then as soon as school is out, yeah, I'm gonna start getting some home bodies and get those into the shop and adding some more fat quarters. Guys, have a great rest of the day. I hope you are happy, I hope you are healthy, and I hope you do something creative. Bye.